Good afternoon, everyone. And I'll say something that I promised my family I wasn't going to say today, but something's fishy around here. So it's really wonderful to see all of you. I'm Debbie Rhodes. As Father Peter said, I'm the Director of Stewardship for the Collaborative of St. Anne's and St. Catherine's. So the position's new, but I've worked at St. Anne's since 2002. Most of that time as the business manager. Anyway, before we get started, I wanted to thank a few people. First, I really just want to thank God for this beautiful day, and a big thank you to him for not giving us a January blizzard. I was a little concerned. And thank you to the Stewardship Council, the people that worked on WelcomeFest, from planning to those that are here today, and the videographer, the photographer. It's just incredible that everybody came together to do this. And thank all of you for being here today. So as part of my new position as Director of Stewardship, one of the things I was fortunate to get to do was to go to New Orleans. It was really tough, along with a few other people on the Stewardship Council, to go to the International Catholic Stewardship Conference in October. And we were just blown away. The information we received, the speakers, it just made our heads swim. And contrary to what you might hear from Father Peter, that wasn't because of the hurricanes we enjoyed on Bourbon Street. So anyway, one of the speakers that really resonated with us, it was like an aha moment for those of us that were there. And after her talk, we just wanted to somehow bring that back home. And, you know, it was just kind of one of those discussions you have and set it aside. But when we got back, I contacted the speaker and asked if she would be so kind as to share her PowerPoint presentation, and we'd figured somehow we'll share that. And she did one better. She offered the gift of her time. Talk about living your faith and sharing your blessings. So that speaker was Christine Heusinger. And her talk at the conference was hospitality. It's not just greeters at the door. And you're going to hear some of that today and more. And Christine has worked for the Archdiocese of Atlanta for almost 24 years, beginning with the Archbishop's office. In 2010, she was named Associate Director of the Office of Stewardship, and her responsibilities include coordinating Archdiocesan and National Second Collections, missionary cooperative appeal. But her main responsibility is working with the pastors and lay parish leadership on strengthening the engagement of parishioners in parish life by increasing stewardship awareness. She does this by providing resources, special stewardship workshops, and constant encouragement. The Archbishop's annual appeal takes a good deal of her time in the fall and early winter, especially this time of year, so thank you. A big thank you to her for being here now. And she travels across her archdiocese working with pastors and improving their appeal campaigns. Christine and her husband David have been married 42 years and attend St. Peter Chanel Catholic Church in Roswell, Georgia. They're the parents of 2 grown children, 2 grandsons, and another grandchild on the way. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Christine Heusinger.
I'm Christine Heusinger from the Archdiocese of Atlanta, and I'm the Associate Director of the Stewardship Office there. And it really is my pleasure to be here, and I'm very thankful. And I'd like to start out with a short video.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He was the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
That's great, isn't it? I love that video. Scripture is filled with hospitality. So get out your Bibles and we're going to go through these one by one. You didn't bring your Bibles? Okay, then you're going to have to take my word for it. Hospitality during those times was critical. It was critical for the safety of the stranger because there weren't just comfort inns or holiday inns on every corner like we have. There could have been hundreds of miles between an inn, and very commonly your average traveler would not have been able to afford that anyway. So hospitality is deeply rooted in Mosaic law, and it is critical. So we call it holy hospitality because it was rooted in Mosaic law. It wasn't just being nice to the guy. It was a holy job that was given to everyone. It was much more than politeness or friendliness. It was a way to survive in a very, very rough world. Travelers had to rely on strangers for survival because traveling was very, very dangerous. And hosts had a sacred obligation to provide food, water, safety, and it was the guests' responsibility and obligation to accept that. This is still very much the way of life in the Mediterranean countries. This is still very much rooted in their social life. The refusal on either part was a very severe breach. And whether we think of encountering an angel and the stranger or the actual presence of Christ, there's no question about the importance placed on hospitality to the stranger. Again and again in Scripture, the focus, and this is very important, the focus is not on the worthiness of the stranger. The focus is on the faithfulness of the one encountering the stranger. Going back to the story you heard, the scripture you heard during the prayer service, Abram, it was his duty to welcome those three strangers. And not only did he welcome them, but he begged them, stay. Let me feed you, let me tend you. He washed their feet. That was his obligation. It was the obligation of those three strangers to accept that hospitality. Guests have a solemn obligation not to harm their host. The sharing of food constituted a covenant to friendship. And one of the most despicable acts would be to eat with someone and then betray them. So the most despicable act, think about New Testament, the most despicable act would be to eat with someone and then to betray them. So it adds a whole nother dimension to what Judas did. Holy hospitality involves recognizing the face of Christ in family, in friends, in colleagues, and in strangers. It means responding to them as you would respond to the presence of Christ. So you think to yourself, this person sent by God could be a great blessing to my life, or I could be a great blessing in his or her life. Our relationship with others is transformed when we seriously consider the fact that we are encountering Christ in the stranger. That should affect all of our relationships, every day of our lives. One of my favorite scripture stories is The Road to Emmaus. And in this story, the two fellows that were walking down the road, they were sad and they didn't understand what had been going on, and the stranger appeared to them. The stranger was Christ himself, but they didn't recognize him. So how often do we possibly not recognize the fact that Christ is in the person that we are encountering? So what is your responsibility in all this? What is your responsibility in holy hospitality? Let me stop by asking you, how many of you are part of the welcoming ministry at either St. Anne's or St. Catherine's? Everybody should raise their hands. You are all part of the ministry of welcoming. It doesn't make a difference if you are part of the greeter or part of the usher ministries. You are all part of the ministry of hospitality and welcoming. And this is something you have to understand, that it is every person in the pew. It is their responsibility to see Christ in others and to be welcoming. CARA is the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, so it's much easier to call it CARA, but they do studies for churches and religious orders across the country, and they found that the millennial and post-millennial Catholics who are screeching out of our parishes, if you haven't noticed, they need to feel welcome, and they will rapidly desert any congregation if they're not made to feel welcome. They will just split. They need to be welcomed, and they need to feel that they're relevant. So we need to make it easy for visitors and newcomers. So we can do that by helping people find their way. One of the ways to do this is to have good signage, but also to be welcoming from the time you're in the parking lot all the way till the time you're in the pew. A few years ago, I was meeting with the pastor of one of our mega Protestant churches. And when I was driving onto their property, there was a little sign on the side that said, "First-time visitors use parking lights." And I thought that was unusual. So when we were meeting, I asked him, I said, "What was with that sign?" And he said, "Well, we have welcome ministers in the parking lot, and they will stop the car and show them where the first-time visitor parking spaces are, and then they will show them which door," because this church had multiple buildings, how to actually get into their sanctuary space. Directions to the church. Now, see, I come from the South. Well, actually, I was born a Yankee, but I got to the South as fast as I could. In the South, when you move into a neighborhood, one of the first questions you get is, "What church do you go to?" Church in their faith is not privatized like Catholics tend to do. They are welcoming. If you say you don't have one yet, they'll say, "Well, come to mine." I mean, they're so energetic and so evangelical. And we're called to do that. The gospel mission is go out and make disciples. So we are called not to just sit and keep our faith private. This is a mandate from Jesus himself that we are to go out. And boy, the Protestants, they really understand this so well. So we need to be welcoming, and we need to share the excitement about our parish. We need to tell them what we love about our parish. Up here, when you meet someone new, there's probably a really good chance that they were raised or at least born Catholic. So you need to share what it is that you love about St. Anne's or St. Catherine's. Have signage that makes it very clear where to park when they get here. Help them find the entrance, and have greeters at the door, ushers inside. I see this a lot where greeters will be standing and talking to somebody and just chatting with their friends instead of being aware of what's going on at the doors. And so if you're a greeter, you need to be aware of the person coming in. Even if they're there every Sunday, they need to be greeted. My church only does fairly well in this, and my husband and I were going to Christmas Mass a couple of years ago, and there were no greeters. The most important Sunday of the year, it's Christmas and Easter, because all your CEOs showed up, your Christmas and Easter only. It's so important to have greeters, and we didn't have any greeters. So I signed up to be a greeter the very next week. My husband said, why? Why do you need greeters? And I said, for some people, that may be the first smile they've received all day. They may be coming from a living hell at home. They need to feel welcomed when they get to church. The ushers need to be welcoming and smiling. The people in the pews need to be welcoming and smiling, whether they know the person or not. Some people are so lonely, and they just need to be reached out to. If you're welcoming someone new, touch their arm, touch their elbow. Welcome them to your parish, because Christ is in them. It is not just an empty shell of a stranger. You are encountering Christ, and they need to be encountering Christ as well. Share that heartfelt smile and a touch with children too. Don't ignore the kids when they come in. Give them a great welcome. Move over. Unless you're going to be getting up to be a Eucharistic minister at Mass, move over. Please make room for someone else coming in. Share what you love about your parish. The whole church watched with nervous anticipation as the visitors sat where the Martins have sat for 42 years. Oh, those poor visitors. Years ago, before I developed and evolved a little bit, we always went to church. I mean, I never left the church and came back. I always went to church. I was always a regular. Ever since I was in my 30s, I was always involved in church. And yet, I looked at the CEOs as aliens. And I resented the fact that every Sunday, my family always sat in the front row. That was to keep the kids focused. Always sat in the front row. And so we get to church, and there's no space anywhere. So I did have resentment. But as I evolved, I realized that they were needing to be fed. I could give up my space. I could be welcoming to them in the hope that they realized that this was their parish family. Whether they went there or not, we were their parish family. And as a parish family, we really weren't complete without them. So it took some spiritual growing on my part, but now I realize that I need to feel so happy and blessed that they have come to church. Even at this time, if it's only twice a year, maybe next year it will be regularly, because maybe they will have been feeling so welcomed. So what are the top reasons why visitors return? And this is a study, LifeQuest 2004. 67% of visitors return to a parish because of the warmth and the welcome of the parish. I read years ago that it was in the 60s or possibly even the 70% of visitors made up their mind before the homily ever started whether or not they were ever coming back. So if it wasn't the priest's amazing words bringing them back, what was it? It was the warmth of the people in the pews that brought them back. It really isn't all about the pastor. It's about the family united. And I love this of St. Teresa. The biggest disease is not leprosy or tuberculosis, but rather the feeling of being unwanted. Several years ago, we had moved to another parish, and my husband went to his first men's club meeting ever. And they were planning the summer picnic. And he signed up to flip burgers for an hour. I was really surprised because that was coming out of the box for him. I was stepping out of the box. So we got to the picnic and he went straight up to the grill, and this is what he was told. We're fine. We don't need any help, but thanks. I'm sure there was no avarice on the part of these fellows that said that. I have no doubt there was no evil or lack of heart. I'm sure they just didn't want to go take care of the kids. They were having a good time. That's what they wanted to do. But what they didn't realize is the effect that it was going to have on my husband, who came back to where I was and said, they don't need me. They don't want me. It's just a little clique. And he never, to this day, has gone back to a men's club meeting. So I feel as though they've lost out on something, because I think he is a great guy. But what really hurt my heart is how he felt, because he felt not needed and not wanted. Now I want to tell another story that is just wonderful hospitality. I was at a parish and I was waiting for the pastor, so I was sitting on a chair in the hallway, and there was a lady maybe 20 feet away that was really busy putting up a display board or something for the weekend in one of her ministries. She was very busy, and someone came in and said, "Excuse me, could you tell me where the AA meeting is?" And she could have just said, "I don't know," and continued what she was doing. But instead she said, "I don't know, but let me show you where we can find out." And she said, "Follow me," and they went walking down to the other end of the hall, and I could hear her very clearly, and she said, "There's a list of all of the meetings. It's in classroom 7. I'll take you there." Now that is hospitality. And I thought, oh my gosh, if we treated every visitor like that, if we treated everyone who asked us a question or had a puzzled look on their face, if we treated them with such warmth, if we treated them as though this was Christ that I was encountering, we would have filled churches and maybe not so many CEOs. So what can you do within your ministries? Well, the first thing is anytime anyone expresses any interest in a ministry, or if someone tells you Mary's interested in being a sacristan, immediately make contact with that person. Find out their number and make a phone call. After that, send them an email. Let them know that you really are interested in them and that you needed their talents in your ministry. I belong to St. Vincent de Paul, and about 10 years ago, we could, at our monthly meeting, everyone fit around this table, around one table. And so then we decided at a meeting to take on this vision of hospitality, and we had I don't know if they have them up here, but we have time and talent ministry fairs. And so everyone that showed interest in St. Vincent de Paul, I placed a personal call to them, called them until I reached them, sent them an email follow-up. I was inviting them to the next meeting, which was going to be an informational meeting rather than just a typical business meeting. It's an informational meeting, and we were going to have some really good food. And then they were sent an evite. So they were reached 3 times before that next meeting. And now when we have a St. Vincent de Paul meeting, we can fill up 6. We went from 2 caseworkers to 9. And that's an immense ministry now. And it's because we decided as a group, we were going to be reaching out to those who had an interest in St. Vincent de Paul ministry. And I don't know if you know a lot about casework, but that is not easy to get into. That really takes, it takes work, and it takes love, and it takes leadership. So you reach them with a phone call, an email, What message are you giving to newcomers when they come to your ministry? Are you welcoming and happy that they're there? A very, very dear friend of mine is a single senior, and someone at our parish said, well, come to the fish fry because we have this single and single again group for people your age. And so she went to the fish fry, and the woman that invited her said, I can't stay, but they're all sitting at that table. That's the group. And so she went and sat down, and nobody spoke to her. So she never went back, because that was a little clique. That was a little club. And this is not the place to have cliques or clubs. This is the place to realize that we are encountering Christ every day. So how can you be more welcoming when they arrive? How about having someone at the door whose job it is to be a greeter? Not just on Sundays, but if you're having a monthly meeting, have someone at the door who will be willing to greet everyone that comes in and make an especial greeting to those who are new by bringing them in and introducing them to a couple people. We want to welcome you. What kind of message are we going to give these people? We want to welcome you, or there's no vacancy. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. People will never forget how you made them feel. So what are the rewards of this? An infectious faith. A new excitement in the parish, deeper engagement of your members. This is really important for the growth and life of a parish. Stronger bonding of members, and sustained growth and abundant sharing. Pope Francis says, we are not alone. We do not walk alone. We are part of the one flock of Christ that walks together. I don't know if you have felt it, but I have felt it in places. Every parish, and Christine did not make this up. I read it must be true. I didn't read it off the internet. There's a lot of books on hospitality. One called Holy Hospitality. But every parish thinks they're more inviting and welcoming than they are. And it's because we tend to see things through our lens. And that is that we see our friends and we see the people that we are familiar with. And we might not see the person who is standing alone. And that's why we need to maybe step out of our comfort zone and go over and introduce yourself. If you're not comfortable doing that, bring your friend with you. But if you see someone standing alone, be Christ to that person. Many years ago, I went to a women's club meeting at another parish, and nobody approached me. And I just stood at the back of the room thinking, well, I won't tell you what I think. I won't tell you what I think. But that ministry was not growing, and it kind of dissolved over a period of 4 years, and something new and engaging took their place. But it's so absolutely critical that we are aware of the person who is alone, standing off by themselves, and make them feel more welcoming. And so this goes back to that, we all think our church is very, very welcoming, but that's because we're looking at it from a different viewpoint. We're not looking at that from the same point of view that the person that's standing alone is. Do we have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'll be the brave one. Thank you for coming.
It was my pleasure.
I was curious to what extent inspired by Pope Francis and his message of acceptance and gratitude and inclusion versus just something that you've learned over time. So in other words, was this expressly inspired by the Pope?
Is not everyone enjoying the Francis effect? I mean, it's a phenomenon. Yes, definitely, definitely. And you will see this in my next talk as well, but how can we not be affected by this man? And what a leader. You know, what a Christ-like leader he is. Any other questions? Yes, Oscar?
So, I have a question. You were talking about, reaching out to people when they have they're showing interest. I find that some people tend to sometimes pull away when you try to reach too fast, too much.
I don't agree with that. I think the worst thing a parish can do, I think one of the cardinal sins is not to make contact. The worst thing is to not contact someone who's shown interest because they're not going to contact you again. I think making a phone call right away is extremely important. You can tell by their response if maybe you've misunderstood. Maybe someone misunderstood when they said that Joanne was interested in being a sacristan. I mean, that's possible. And she'll let you know.
So you were trying to make like the first contact, the initial contact, and then from there, then you can decide whether you...
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was speaking to someone the other day from the Stephen Ministry. I don't know if you're familiar with Stephen Ministry. It's not like St. Vincent de Paul in that they're not providing money or providing services. It's providing contacts and how to get help. And someone signed up because they were interested in the Stephen Ministry. And so my friend contacted them right away because just the way she is. And after talking to him, she realized that there was a lot more to Stephen Ministry than he felt that he was, able to. So she said, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put his name aside, and next year I'm going to send him an email, and invite him to another meeting to see if he would be interested in a year. Because sometimes people just need time to pray over it. Like I said, I've been a member of St. Vincent de Paul for 10 years. I'm still not a caseworker. I've gone to caseworker training twice thinking maybe this is something I should do, and then just not feeling like I'm ready yet. So I'm very involved in St. Vincent de Paul in other things. I'm not there yet for casework. So it's just, that's something that's just going to take prayer. And maybe that's not my talent. I don't know. But we all have different talents. And we all have talents. I'll be talking to you about that another time. Any other questions? Yes?
How do you feel about leaving a message and the follow-up of leaving a message?
On the phone?
Yeah. I know that seems like...
No, a lot of the time you'll be leaving mostly messages.
Right.
Yeah. So, but try again. The important thing is that they know you're reaching out. That's the important thing. So if they get 2 messages from you saying that you're responding to their interest in sacristans, that's them receiving the message, I'm needed and I'm wanted. So leaving messages is fine. What I do is I make the first phone call, I'll leave a message, I'll try a message again, always with an email, and then that evite. So no, a message, sometimes, we're so busy. They're busy. So yeah, no, messages definitely important. They're still getting that message from you. Yes, sir.
You had a slide on the data, what brings people back.
Right.
How did you arrive at those numbers?
That was a LifeQuest study that was done. I got it out of one of the many books on parish engagement. Yeah. I didn't make it up, I promise. So let's go back to that slide. 67% will come back because they were welcomed and they felt the warmth of the people. 62 will come back because a friend has invited them. That's important too. The liturgy, 49%. Liturgy is very important. I will never, ever downplay the importance of liturgy. Religious ed, 44. Meaningful to them, 37. Childcare, 29. The building, it's a pretty low 12%. So the important thing is that they're invited by a friend and that they are felt welcome when they get there. Another question? Yes.
So that means that all that effort on shining up the floors is not paying off?
Is that your job, Liliana?
I'm a business manager, so
Well, you know, there's probably different thoughts on that. There's a church in Wichita that is famous as being the stewardship model. It's Monsignor McGreed's parish, and they offer a free weekly healthcare service, clinic, a free clinic. They also offer free tuition. But when you go to the church, you think, oh, they could use some carpet, some new carpet, you know. So a lot of that depends on the pastor, you know. To me, it's very important that a church is also tithing outside the church. I mean, to me, that's very important, that it's not keeping everything within. Yeah. It's very, very important that bathrooms be sparkling clean. Absolutely important that the bathrooms not be shabby. Yes?
Yeah, I would say that to me your message is very strong and very accurate. But what kind of practices can a parish use to continue this after this presentation? I know what I can do from a personal point of view. What can a parish do? Because it's one of the challenges we face as Catholics is to expand.
Absolutely. Ministry leaders need to take this up to their ministries. They need to bring this message strongly to their ministries. If you are an usher or if you're a head of the ushers, it is absolutely extremely important that the ushers understand that they are welcome ministers. They're not soldiers. I have been to churches where they were scary stern.
Give me your money.
Oh, okay. But the message needs to go out into the ministries. The message needs to come from the pulpit, but I understand Father Peter is very good about this. From the pulpit, that everyone here is welcome ministers and everyone here has to embrace the stranger. Yes?
I just wanted to make a comment that sometimes we have a lens of hospitality that just has to do with our own generation. And one of the beautiful benefits of coming together in a church is that you're actually side by side with people that are of all generations. So it's just an awesome opportunity, a very unique opportunity, you know, be welcoming to, you know, someone in many different age brackets than yourself. So, you know, don't just have a lens for, you know, your...
Exactly.
All generations.
Exactly. The comment was we have to be welcoming to all generations, not just our peeps, you know, that are our age, but, and especially those millennials who are leaving at an awful pace. Was there another question right around? Yes.
This is related to the millennials and post-millennials that you've mentioned. So it might be outside this topic, but besides hospitality, how do we get them to stay in our church? And my guess is engagement, but you could...
Oh, but boy, that is, you know, if I had the answer to that, wow. I don't know the answer to that, other than to make them feel very welcomed and to have programs in place for them, a special program for parents of young children, a ministry to families with children 3 and below, a ministry to couples who don't have children yet, a ministry to single adults. I mean, we have to have something to offer them to keep them here, but we have to make them feel that they're needed and needed and welcome. Yes, this is the last question.
How important is the community spirit after the liturgy? And having the coffee hour and the welcome, as many other churches.
It's very important. It's very important.
Sometimes that's when people do connect.
Absolutely, but that's the time that it's so important. The question was, how important is it to have something to offer after Mass, something to build community? It's very important. My niece, my godchild, goes to a Protestant church. I have a godchild that's a priest, so that redeems me, right? As far as being a godparent. But she's Protestant, and I went to her church one Sunday, and after every noon Mass, they have a potluck dinner. And it was amazing. I thought, now a big church probably can't do that, but some of these smaller congregations can, and it was wonderful. And so now we have to go on, mirror, mirror on the wall, do you see Christ in me at all? Think of that. Think of that.
Our question was, what can you as an individual do to help someone feel genuinely welcome to join a ministry you are involved in? We thought about talking to people, but we need to find that there's interest coming in our direction about our ministry. We also put a lot of energy into talking about what to do at Mass, which was, at the sign of peace, make an effort to shake hands with everyone, including the children. Smile. Sit in a different area of the church at least once a month. Yeah, that was a good one, I guess. Invite different ministry representatives to speak at Masses and share personal testimonies, which can be done by many of the ministries,
Excellent.
maybe not all. Introduce yourself to a new person that you're sitting next to or near, and especially anyone sitting alone. And also somehow encourage a church family atmosphere, not just going to church, but that it's a family.
Very good, thank you, thank you. I think, I always go back to sacristans because a lot of people, younger people especially, have no idea what a sacristan is because some churches don't even call them that any longer. But if Father Peter would allow different ministries, maybe once a month, someone to get up for 2 minutes and discuss their ministry and the fact that you are welcome to be a part of the ministry and then what it is the ministry does. Hopefully all of your ministries have mission statements. I really hope you do, because how do you know if you're doing if you don't even know what it should be? But then perhaps that ministry, let's say it's the sacristans who stand there for 1 minute and say what the sacristans do, but then have a table in the narthex with information on being a sacristan, so that more people are aware of all of the different ministries that are available in a parish. Because especially those who are not weekly attendees, and you would be shocked at the percentages of people that are not weekly. But a lot of times they're almost like pew warmers, and that they don't know what's going on in the parish. They need information. So that's an excellent idea. And the idea of moving, I could do that too. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How about back there, Dave? Thank you.
Okay, so the question we chose was, does your parish or groups do anything to reach out to the people who have stopped coming to Mass or to parish events? And we kind of focused on the people who have stopped coming to Mass, and that's a little tricky because how do we know their address or their phone number if there's Catholic people in our community who don't ever attend church? Perhaps they've been away for 50 years or 20 years. So we talked about how it's sort of an individual thing, and it's like a mindset of the church, that you as an individual person should never miss a spontaneous opportunity to engage someone, because we all know people who don't come to church. I was just at dinner with 2 girlfriends who haven't been to church forever, and by the end of dinner, one of them said, okay, Colleen, I'll go to church if you go to church. Maybe we can go to one Mass that Trifina's singing at. So I think it falls on all of us individually to invite those people personally. And it can be a little bit out of your comfort zone, I think, sometimes. Maybe try and stretch your comfort zone and just invite them to come and be at a Mass with Father Peter or Father Joe or Father David. What's another one? We talked about maybe adding a prayer of the faithful to kind of help everyone who attends Mass weekly understand that that's a responsibility that we all have as Catholics, to invite those who have fallen away to come back. So it's just sort of getting your head around, it's not just the people who are here, that's awesome. Maybe you see one of those CEOs, invite them to come regularly. So I think that's really important for all of us to kind of internalize that task and feel comfortable with what we're able to do as far as inviting people in our own towns and communities.
Thank you. That is such an excellent point. We all know someone who is Catholic that has stopped attending. I would imagine most everybody has someone in our own family that has stopped attending. But your friends, talk to them about how much you love your parish and how much you love being involved. Many years ago, when my kids were little, I was really involved in different ministries, and my niece came to visit. And she's only about 15 years younger, maybe not even 15 years younger than I. She spent a whole week with me. And so a couple years later, she told me that she was going to do the children's choir at her parish. She lives in Connecticut. I said, that's amazing. What made you think to do that? And she said, my Aunt Christine. I said, well, what are you talking about? And she goes, because the week I spent with you, we went to church 3 or 4 times for you to deliver this or pick up this or see this. And she said, I just realized how happy you were with your church family. So we have to show that. We have to share that. And she said, I wanted that. So share the love you have for your parish. Okay, where? Right there.
Fran McGann.
God, the abuse you take. Our question was, do you feel as though you are personally accustomed to immediately welcoming people you do not know, or are you more likely to wait and see how people seem to respond to you and why? Two paths. One of them was, people say when they're involved in a ministry and they're at church as part of a ministry, it's easier to welcome people. It's part of the mindset. But if they're just attending church on their own, it doesn't always enter their mind, which goes to what type of an individual they are, an introvert or an extrovert. And the extroverts find it easy all the time to kind of reach out, and they do it. Some of the people who are introverts, they don't find it so easy, and they realize that they have to work to kind of break out of their comfort zone in order to welcome people. However any of us react, it's not malicious, it's not intended, it's just our character and what's ingrained in us, and we felt that we just got to work harder to break out of the box and be more hospitable.
Right. And that goes back to the story I was talking about my husband, who is very much an introvert. And so the fact that he was basically turned away from the grill that day took away any opportunity or any chance that he was going to reach out like that again. I'm not going to put my hand in the fire again. So we just need to be so aware. Next, Oscar.
Yeah, so we actually had the same two questions, I think, that Joe and his table had. So fortunately, we answered them both. So I'm going to skip to the one that he didn't answer, because we pretty much answered the first one exactly the same that he just explained. We talked about recognizing introverts, extroverts, and being, finding that balance of reaching out to people and then maybe pulling away if we need to, and give them some space and then come back. So the second question was, what can you as an individual do to help someone feel genuinely welcome to join a ministry you are involved in? And so here are some of the ideas that we talked about. Welcome each other before the start of Mass. I think, we do a lot of talking after the Mass, or some of us do, but rarely you come in and you really reach out to people and, talk to them. You kind of just sit in your place and then wait for Mass to start. So to have some kind of opportunity to do that, to bring, come in maybe a few minutes early and then try to reach out to people and start that conversation. The other thing was to have some words from the cantor to welcome and, encourage people to say hello to those next to you. Talk about what Joan was saying about, reaching that generational gap. If you sit into somebody who don't know, or
we do that at my
younger,
parish
just
before
reach out
Mass.
to them, say hi, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
We also talk about the gift offering. There's a lot of people that have been coming to church for many, many years and never really had an opportunity to bring the gifts. And I think it's an important, we think it's an important aspect of the Mass, and it makes you feel part of the family, when you bring the gifts.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be nice for the priest, for example, to just encourage if somebody who's been to Mass, who's never done it, if they want to volunteer to just, come and bring the gifts. I think that would be
especially if they have kids, because kids
right.
love that.
But also if you're a single person or somebody who comes
right.
along
Absolutely.
all the time, I mean,
absolutely.
Those people sometimes don't get asked for that same reason. So it would be nice. Again, the generational gap. We notice, my wife and I, we're in that generation where a lot of our kids are now, in the 15 to 20-year-old bracket. And a lot of them are starting to come to church without their parents, which is wonderful. But we notice that they come in, they sit in their place, they go to, they stay for church, and then at the end they leave. Nobody really reaches out to them. And I think it would be great to do something more. We don't know exactly what, but, to kind of, especially for those of us, we try to make it a point, because we know them. We know them literally all their lives, to just come in and say, hey, how are you? How are your parents? Blah, blah, blah. How you like the Mass? And then just make them feel welcome so that they continue to come, Also, there was a suggestion about for newcomers, people who are new to the parish, who've been in the parish within, joined within the next, within the last year, to maybe have some kind of a quarterly breakfast or some kind of event to welcome them. I think we used to do that, if I remember correctly, in St. Anne's at least. I know that we used to do that a while back. And then somehow kind of stop. I know that logistics are hard to sometimes overcome, but I think it would go a long way.
I'd like to interrupt for a second. I don't know how many new families you might have in a month, Deb. For
5 to 10.
5 to 10 new families?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's
a month.
Wow, that's fabulous.
And then similar to that last suggestion, and somebody said, I think that this is something that used to do here in St. Catherine, is for people who have been baptized within the last year or the last quarter to sort of have a gathering, come back after a month, after 3 months.
That's
or after a year,
excellent.
To just kind of keep them.
I love that idea. Would you say it again and speak a little louder?
Sorry. For people who
That's
have been
better.
baptized, have had a child baptized within the last 3 months or last 6 months or last year, have some kind of a gathering to bring them back and, see how they're doing, and make sure that they stay connected.
Excellent idea. Thank you. All right, we have time for one more table.
Are we
address the question of, do you feel as though you are personally accustomed to immediately welcoming people you do not know, or you're more likely to wait and see how many people seem to respond to you and why? A lot of what's already been said as we talked about, but one thing we thought of that when, like right at the beginning of Mass, and this has been often done to say turn around and say hello to somebody you don't know, but beyond just saying hello, ask a question. You know, give a minute or two to be able to ask some sort of a question to try to make a connection with that person, or share something about yourself that might make them feel more welcome in the community.
And don't be afraid that they might say, I've been a member for 20 years. Don't be afraid of that. Because then you could say, oh, well, you must really love the parish. So please don't be embarrassed if someone says, I've been a member forever, you know.
Right now, I believe we're going to take a 10-minute break. See you in a few.